Patty. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right. We're going to get rolling with the meeting now. Is this loud enough? Okay. Good. Great. I'm Frank Coffey. I'm the chair of the Vermont State Workforce Development Board, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first, I'm going to move something up on the agenda. Sophia circulated all the documents previously, but we have to approve the minutes from our July 19th meeting, which have been circulated, and I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Moved by Jeff, second by Eileen. Any proposed edits? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed or abstained? Great. All right, our first agenda item is H919 Act 189 implementation proposal, and Commissioner Curley is going to walk us through that report. Be careful of that. It's going to go.
You're going to prevent me from making a fool of myself. Right? Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to set a timer here so I can help keep us on the schedule. So all of you should have received a one-page summary of the H919 implementation plan. I think it might be in the folder there. And so I want to walk you through what the process was. Let's see if I can get this rolling. I have to go the other way. Okay. So the three core WIOA partners, myself, along with Agency of Education, that was Heather Boucher specifically, and Voc Rehab, Diane Delmas, met to create this collaboratively. The full plan was then presented to the operating committee, who voted affirmatively to send it to the full board for a vote. I know it sounds like a long process, but I wanted to walk you all through the proposal now with the hopes that when we're done, we can take a vote to approve at the end. So as part of the response to H919, the board was instructed to conduct a stakeholder and systems alignment process. So what I'm going to walk you through are 5 activities that were collaboratively created and agreed upon by the partners that will fulfill this process. So as I go along, I'll try to keep up with the PowerPoint as well. We'll start with Activity 1. So Activity 1 will be to create and execute regional workforce development summits throughout Vermont. Although we have not determined how the regions or areas will be defined, we have agreed as part of this activity and process that we will look to hire a consultant to help standardize these smaller summits and create a standardized meeting template so that all of the information that's being fed back to the board and all of the data that we are collecting at these smaller summits can be used to inform a larger statewide summit that I'll talk about in Activity 2. Activity 2 is the larger statewide summit, and this meeting will be informed, again, by the information collected at the regional summits. We've agreed to utilize the planning, financial, and business outreach resources, or statewide Vermont Chamber of Commerce, other sponsors, and whatnot, to assist us in planning and executing this larger summit. One, so that we aren't doing all of the work ourselves and recreating the wheel, but also so that we are aligning goals and including groups of stakeholders that also want to conduct a statewide summit. We realized through planning that there were a few other organizations looking to conduct such a gathering, and so we decided to partner. This will be a large one-day summit, and we will include key participants, employers and workforce partners, who will learn, engage, and inform one another through carefully structured activities throughout the day. Activity 3. Activity 3 checks 2 boxes. As both a piece of our implementation plan, but also this activity is specific charge of H919 as well. We have been directed to create a directory of relevant state plans from all relevant state agencies to ensure uniformity and to align our planning as it relates to workforce development. This will likely fall as a task to the policy committee and will help the board understand where areas of overlap exist and will help align our goals in full system implementation where possible. Activity 4. This activity is to establish workforce system performance measures that will help private and public stakeholders evaluate how well Vermont is meeting our training, education, and employment needs. This might sound familiar to some of you who attended the meeting back in June. And step one will be to establish and agree upon our metrics as a board. And if you attended that June training, you'll remember that we were given a full list of potential metrics that we might want to contemplate. Step two will be to agree on what data needs to be collected annually to inform these metrics, understanding that the time it takes to collect the data and how we collect it is very important. The goal of this activity is to establish a dashboard to tangibly update using our metrics to see how the full system is functioning, but also to track program performance. Activity 5, sometimes we think we might, look like we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but we just submitted our state plan, and Activity 5 will actually establish an ad hoc committee that will be tasked with leading the state plan modification for 2020. So again, I know it seems like we just did it, but it's coming right up as well. So if anybody has any specific questions on the plan, I can help answer. Sarah is on the phone, Sarah Buxton's on the phone, and Sophia has also been very involved in this part of the process. So if there's some discussion or conversation, we'll do that, and after that, we'll ask Frank to call a motion for a vote. You guys awake? Just kidding. All right, so, sure, Lynn, go ahead.
Hi, I just have a question about whether this disaggregation of data, you mentioned data in 2 places at least, whether there's been thought to making sure that we can, from the start, fix some issues that we have in collecting data currently, like especially regarding disaggregation by gender in all careers.
Yes, so we are constantly thinking about that. So I hate to put anybody on the spot. Matt, are you willing to, did you hear what the question was? To kind of take a stab at some of the issues we have with respect to tracking gender data?
Sure.
Yeah, do you mind? Yeah, so this is Matt Barowitz. He is he is the chief of our chief economist at Labor, so.
So I would say to the point about data disaggregation, always interested, especially the information available to work through that. I am unfamiliar about how this particular plan is going to unfold, so I'd be interested to see how we can align those particular efforts, because this is the first time I'm learning about this as well. So to the extent that labor market information or the Department of Labor data that we're collecting or tracking can be incorporated in the discussion so that the end goals align with what we'd like to see and measure, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to really have to agree on what metrics are used and be sure that we can gather the right information as well. So, yes.
So, Lindsay, how are the performance measures going to be identified? Like, is it this committee that we're putting out on that, or a separate ad hoc working group that creates those measures?
Yeah. So let me see if I can remember how we decided, how we would pull a group together to establish those metrics. I can't recall if we've specifically identified who is doing that, but certainly, do you know, Sophia? Awesome.
Speak to that a little bit. So we were hoping that the policy committee would kind of be in charge of establishing the metrics that we're going to use for the dashboard, but we'd obviously like input from all members of the board. And like Lindsay said before, Commissioner said before, at the June meeting, we all brainstormed a list of potential metrics, so we'll definitely be pulling from that list that we all helped create back in June as kind of a starting point, but we're hoping that the policy committee will really take charge in deciding which metrics are in the final dashboard.
Yeah, Jess.
Oh, I was just going to add that when it comes to program performance, especially, we do actually collect VIOLA and have VIOLA standards for how our programs are performing. We just released a report that I can send to Sophia too, so that she sends it out to the board. We can kind of use VIOLA performance.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for clarifying that, Jess. All right, so any other? Oh, Dale.
Hi, just for clarification, so who were the stakeholders?
Who were?
You stand up and
Who were the stakeholders?
For workforce development in general?
the entire state.
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's education, labor, workforce, legislature. Yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone. Do you have any thoughts on? I mean, I'm guessing you have a.
That's next, my second question is this only government coordination?
No.
Or is it broader to include other initiatives on workforce development?
We want to be broad, and honestly, we are looking to this group to make sure that we are hitting all of the areas that we need to be hitting so that it is not government driven. It is, employer, job seeker. We want to make sure that we're hitting all of the right areas of this. So again, I would love, we can have a conversation, but I'm guessing you might have some specific thoughts too about who should be included that maybe isn't at the table right now. So we'll talk further on that. Eileen.
So when we discussed this at the operating committee, we talked about, Lindsay has in there, 70 by 2025. So we were talking to make sure that we have the different groups that are meeting that have the same goals in mind, our stakeholders, as well as the employers of the different regions. We're not kind of pipeline with one of the stakeholders. So there are many stakeholders. We want to make sure that when we have these summits, we're getting everyone together so that everybody's hearing the same thing and sharing the same information.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's our hope is with the smaller ones, it's going to start to flush out, the right people that should be at the table, and so that hopefully by the time we get to the big summit with everybody, we will have all the right players. So, all right. Any other before I get Frank, Frank to take a motion? Oh, geez, that was easy. Senator Clarkson has made a motion.
Moved by Senator Clarkson. Second by Jeff. Any discussion? This is on the proposal that Lindsay just presented. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to go through committee updates, and we'll start with Eileen Aluzzi and Career Pathways Committee.
So I've never been known for my soft-spoken voice, so I don't think I need to go up there. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, so the Career Pathways Committee has met a few times, and one of the things that we discussed and kind of struggled with was what was the definition we were using for career pathways, because career pathways can mean different things to different people. It includes many things when you're using one definition, but the definition that we need to use in our work is the definition that AOE and DOL use for the WIOA plan, which really is very set, and the definition in the legislature goes around that. So we discussed what's going on with the Agency of Education and their development of the different career pathways, and we also spoke at a meeting about, with the definition that we're using, is there anything missing that when these career pathways are developed, as it's written in the legislation, they will be developed and adopted, then they come to the committee and, in essence, the State Workforce Development Board for approval. So is there anything that's missing as we're looking at this, and how are we really going to, when they come to us, evaluate them to make sure that they have all the components that they need, they have employer engagement, and that they're leading to good outcomes. So that's where we're at right now. We sent out a Google Doc for our different committee members to ask questions, respond to, put thoughts out, and we're going to be having another meeting again in a few weeks and go on from there. Any questions? Great, thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Training and Credentialing Work Group is Marilyn Cargill. There we go. Do you want to come up here?
I don't think I need to. I
Okay.
think I can be just as loud. Just as loud as they are, as long as that's okay with everyone. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the training and credentialing work group. We're relatively new. We were created with a couple of tasks in mind. So I'm going to read this to you just to make sure I get this correct. So we're charged with recommending the charge and initial membership of the Training and Credentialing Committee that will be a subcommittee of the Workforce Development Board. In addition to that, they will also be overseeing the WIOA eligible training, provider eligibility, the approval process, and possibly
will be working with a facilitator. We're working right now on finding out, giving someone a name to do some facilitation of this process to really define what this initial charge is going to be and make sure we get this right. As many of you know, this credentialing question is really, really important to the state of Vermont, and making sure that the standing committee really has a clear charge and a clear ability to move this forward is going to be very, very important for all of us. So that's what we're working on right now. And as I said, this committee is made up of a number of people who are in the room, but just to give names to that statement, Hugh Bradshaw, who's here today from the Department of Rehab, serves on this. Kim Bushy, Department of Corrections, Jane Ford, Department of Labor, Maureen Hebert, who's also here today from DCC, Lauren Hibbert from the Office of Professional Regulation, Sharon Parker from the Agency of Education, Mary Ann Sheehan, the House Pipeline, so I think you are on everything that's going on. Thank you for serving on this as well. And Jody Teagarden from the Center for Technology from Essex. So that is the group that's working on coming up with the standard names. Any questions?
Thank you. Commissioner Curley's back for Policy Committee.
I'm not sure I'm as loud, but I'll try if you want to stay put, because we'll need 2 motions.
Okay.
So the policy committee met for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and it went very well. The chair of this committee is Dick Marin, and he is not here today. I'm guessing he's in warmer, sunnier parts. So I'm presenting on his behalf. The committee has representation across state government, higher education, CTE, and business. And our group has already proven to be very helpful, and we addressed, well, let me just kind of take you, sorry, I'm going to move over and tell you what the committee charge is first. So the committee is charged with reviewing and implementing WIOA one-stop policy, board governance, and other workforce policies. And I don't mean legislative policies, I mean structural policies that are required by the federal government that are meant to guide this full board. So during our first meeting, the committee approved 2 proposed amendments. In your packet, again, you'll find a printout. It's titled Vermont, well, let's see what it's called. Policy Committee Recommendations. If you want to look at that, if you haven't seen it already, or you may want to follow along, one of the proposed amendments was to add more details around committee procedures to the board governance document. So back a year ago in the fall, we had a comprehensive review done by our regional VOL partners, and the review revealed a need for the board to become more active in the development and approval of WIOA Title I policies that are carried out by the Vermont Department of Labor. As part of that process for the Department of Labor trying to help correct that, we established several committees to support the board in carrying out these statutory duties. And the current governance document is very vague about the authority of committees and the procedures they follow. So what we did as a policy group is we made a recommendation to clarify these concerns. So you'll see that on the second page of the printout, down under the area where it says Article 4 committees, and it gives you some more detail on that. The other policy that we addressed was amending VDOL's WIOA eligible training provider procedures to establish a process for adding apprenticeships to the list. And again, this is this goes on to the third page, and it was some clarifying language again about being on the list, being taken off the list, and it was kind of making it a little more detailed and clarifying. So I don't know if there's any questions on this. We have Sarah on the phone who can help us navigate some of the changes in the policy that we made. Lynn?
Lindy, could you go back a step? I think you said that your WIOA partners who were looking at how we're doing.
Right.
Wanted to make sure that there was more engagement in how we were carrying out the plan that we've written. And that the Department of Labor is taking it on to review that and look at the partners and see if there's anyone missing?
No, have been, oh my gosh, it's gonna get amplified. Here, I'm gonna walk this over to Lynn for a second. So Sarah, I think that there might have been a misunderstanding that maybe labor was trying to identify people that we were missing in our process of trying to carry out the directives, let's say, WIO Title I policies. Whereas I feel like, right, so can you explain what can you clarify what I was trying to explain? Because I know that's not what we were doing.
Yep, absolutely. So this is a very narrow technical,
Hang on a second, let's try this again. See if we can get it up to here. It was working.
Okay, go ahead.
There you go.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a very narrow change to one aspect of the eligible training provider procedure. We will be doing over the course of the next year a full overhaul. This change is only specific to the notification to apprenticeship sponsors, telling them that they can opt out of being placed on the list and allowing them an opportunity to do that.
So, Sarah,
that answer the
that's
question?
great. That answered one question that I'm sure people had, but I think we're going back to the first policy change that was a result of the review that we had, the finding where the board needed to become more active in the development and approval of WIO Title I policy. Sorry. So we're just trying to clarify.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and so what WIOA requires is that the board weigh in on some.
We lost you. No, I didn't touch it.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can. We got
Okay,
you.
try again.
Great.
You're back.
Are you back, Sarah? Are you hitting the mute button?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
We can now,
Can you
go
hear me?
ahead.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. The board is required to take action and sign off on specific policies for Title I and also I think for Title II and maybe for Title IV. I at least know for Title I. In the past, the department has promulgated those policies. WIOA now asks the board to weigh in on some of the definitions or priorities, etc. And so this creating the policy committee and the committee structure themselves allows the board to begin to do that work. So that we have a process for the board approving those without having to go through a full 55-member approval process with every unique policy that needs approval. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Do you have any further
It
questions?
does. What I was looking for
Okay.
was to make sure that there is substantial employer input, and I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I need to go back
Yes.
and look at the board.
Right.
minutes.
Yes, and that's actually very important, and it's good for the board to keep remembering that, both in approving the policies, but in participation in the committees, because the whole reason the State Workforce Development Board has to weigh in on these policies is that it is in statute 51% employer driven. So rather than having a state entity that isn't necessarily by its structure tending to business interests, you have a board that is supposed to represent an employer-driven workforce system. And so, yes, but also we need to be diligent about making sure that the employer interests continue to be represented.
Good.
Great.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Sarah.
Okay, so Frank, if you could
Yes.
call for a motion on.
I will call
those
for a
policies.
motion to approve policy 1. Moved by Jeff, seconded by Eileen. Any other questions on that? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay. And now we need a motion to approve and adopt policy recommendation number 2.
Second.
Moved by Eileen, seconded by Senator Clarkson. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, great. Commissioner Curley, thank you for doing that. Now we're going to move to Representative Tristan Taleno, who's going to give us a presentation on our network mapping project.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
It's not mine.
All right.
I just saw it on the table. I decided
Great.
to Sophia's going to help me here to call up an image, and the reason I'm not up there is I have to change images partway through. So just a reminder of what that we had agreed to do a pilot of a social network map. And what I wanted to share with you is just a few high-level observations of where we are, kind of the context for why we might have started this project, and a very small example of the kinds of things that we could do going forward, depending on where we all take it. And so can you get the 3 little dots thing to move over to? So one of the challenges of working within a complex system is actually getting a sense of the whole of the system, who's in it, how complex it actually is, and how interconnected it is. So this is one way of visualizing it, and just this way looks daunting, confusing, kind of a strange mess, super geeky and technical, and hard to make sense of. Oops, I do need to, where am I here, Sophia, sorry. I do need to change one thing. I want to zoom out, and I don't know which one your desktop is.
You're gonna have to look behind you.
Oh, I have to look behind me. I'm in the way. You didn't like my head there? Okay, so I'm going to zoom out for a second. And explain a little bit about what's going on here. So what we, fundamentally, a social network map is about the people in a system and how well connected they are and how often they collaborate. And the software visually models those representations. What we knew is that we wanted to invite people in to help us get a sense of the complexity of this system. And I will say, speaking as one of the 2 legislators on this board, and having been part of this conversation for several years, it's a real challenge for the legislature to understand how to be informed enough about the kinds of policy changes that need to happen and all of the different stakeholders. And I felt like we needed some way actually to give all of the stakeholders in this system permission to be a little overwhelmed. And so this image is in part permission to be a little overwhelmed. And what I mean by that is that we put together an invitation list of 750 individuals in Vermont who are connected in some way to the workforce system. In addition, we have the blue dots are organizations. So there are people on that list of 750 who work inside organizations. And we asked them first, just basically, we pre-populate with the basic information, and then we asked them, to fill out information about who else you knew in the system. So the dots on the periphery are people who have not done any of that work. That's why they are not connected. The dots in the middle are all the people who have done some of it, indicated who they know and all that. So just looking here in the middle, you'll see that there are certain clusters that are denser. And what that means is there are people at the center of these nodes who are highly connected. Matt Barowitz happens to be one of them, or is he? Surprisingly enough, some of the most connected people in our workforce system are in this room, unsurprisingly. And then there are a whole bunch of people who might be slightly on the periphery. So you look at, if you click on any one person's node, I'm not used to this computer, but it should do what it was just doing a second ago. Sorry, now it's not doing it. But where it will abstract out that person's the connections that that person has done. So when in collaborative network theory, what happens here is you're trying to ask the question of how do we get to strategic collective action? So how do we make sense of the complexity within our system with so many stakeholders and so many funders and so many crucial distinctions in responsibility, required outcomes, specific populations. And so the network tools, the collaborative network tools, build off of understanding these social connections and trying to use some analysis to understand where the opportunities might lie. And I'll give you an example. If ideally we get all those other stakeholders filled in, and we can measure this over time because people can go back and do it. I'm going to give you a specific example of the way that this process was designed with filters. Sorry, I have to block it with my head here again. So this is the subset of individuals within the system who indicated that part of their primary area of focus is working with high school age populations. And you can see that there are some people who filled this out who only have one or two connections in. And then there are other people in the center of it who have actually quite a robust organization with quite a robust and close, tight network. And so one of the opportunities is if you spend time doing this kind of work and then clicking through and seeing, if you click through, you can actually see who these individuals are, would be to say, well, how do we convene a group? How do we bring the people who are on the periphery, not very connected in? And you already know by this map who are the people within the high school age or the high school interest group who are the most connected to the system, and you get them to be the conveners, the hosts, for some sort of an engagement process and invite those people on the periphery who aren't there. And so it becomes a tool for filtering through the complexity and developing and designing specific interventions to build connection and collaboration. Out of which, and this is the theory of network collaborative work, out of which you can get a tighter alignment towards a common goal. And it really is sort of the other side of the coin to some of the more bureaucratic and top-down federally required processes. And this board is kind of in the hourglass, the intersection of that bottom-up kind of process and the top-down from the federal, where we're charged with being part of that federal top-down system and the policy making and the alignment, but we're also charged with being the key builders of the strategic alignment within the workforce space. So again, this is a pilot. We've just got the very first phase done, and I think we have to take some time this winter. The legislature is going to be interested in trying to understand it and see whether we all believe that there's value in taking it to the next step, if it will help us inform our strategies, how it marries with the strategies of regional engagement. You will see, I chose a population. We also had it by county, so let's see. We'll go to Chittenden since there's the most people there. What's that? I just did it because I knew there might be more people who filled it out, not because they're uniquely special.
Or there are a lot.
We are special.
So this is the subset of high school age people and people who said that they work with high school age populations in Chittenden County. And so imagine if we had all 750 individuals and 150 organizations put the time in to do the individual connectivity work, then all of these filters would give us a very quick way of saying, how do we target a collaborative group process in a specific region around specific topics and themes? And who do we need to invite? And who are we often forgetting to invite because they're not connected to us that much by their work already? And who are the people who seem to be the most dialed in? And how do we use them as ambassadors to expand the conversation? So that's the high-level overview of the kinds of things that the social network mapping can provide for us as we look to move our workforce system forward. And I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll try to do so without putting my head right in front of the projector again. Is there any guess?
Tristan, I'm supportive wondering how many of those dots that aren't connected might just be dupes.
There were some, I don't think there are a lot. And it's sort of, we did this on a very limited scale. I think this was an under $10,000 consulting project. So we did a very rough phase 1. Phase 2 would definitely do some data validation, some scrubbing, and some further push. You had another question?
Yeah, no, it just occurs to me, I guess my bigger question is, okay, now what do we do with it, right? And I guess you're alluding to that, like the phase 2, right? So one of the things that we just approved is this, these regional workforce summits, right? And the state workforce summit. So is this data going to be ready enough to inform us about who we might engage with when we're developing these regional workforce summits, and then ultimately the full state summit?
So I can speak for myself. One of the things that I do when I'm not in the legislature is I do get involved in helping to design some of these kinds of processes. And if I were the consultant, I would want, and I was going into a region, I would try to slice my understanding of that region in different ways to help shape the invitation and the design of the day. So I would be thinking about, what is realistic to achieve in a regional meeting that's going to get replicated? Where are the critical, sort of the low-hanging fruit, or perhaps the areas of underperformance that we most need to boost? And then I would try to go through and look at some of these slices and work with the design team, stakeholders, and say, what about, do we want to target a conversation around high school age children? Do we want to target a conversation around veterans? Or are we going to operate at a higher level? But if we ignore the opportunity to do some of sort of maybe the sector by sector or the population-based conversations, how do we then design that meeting so that the next follow-up of that meeting starts to get at a granular level for people who are doing the work on the ground, so they feel more connected to each other, more aligned around what's happening within their space? Because some of these people may represent, a nonprofit, some may be part of a state supplied system or a federally funded one. So they represent sort of different slices of activity in the same general space, and they don't always actually interact that much. And so I would be thinking about it as the consultant about how do I use this to be more informed about how to make those regional meetings the most useful and fit it into a larger strategy about those conversations at the statewide level. I saw another, yeah.
So I think it's a really laudable effort, and I know there's a lot of consensus on the power of having the data. I think there's also some concern about how cumbersome the process was for some people, and I think some people didn't participate because of that. And I'm wondering if you're open to extending the collection period and maybe even rewording some of the directions on how to contribute in order to get better data.
So that's a great question. I don't know if everybody heard, there was sort of a question about the cumbersomeness of it and whether we could reframe it. And one of the reasons why we chose this tool to work with is that it's actually live. So any of you right now could go in, update your connections after this meeting, and then it would live populate there. So it becomes, at any given moment, it's a snapshot of where we are. And this whole question of how to query was really hard because we wanted, it's very easy if you don't add in all of these other types of things, types of entities, counties, populations, barriers, because that made the survey part a little bit more cumbersome. But the connection part is relatively quick. Click on a tile, yes, I worked with them, no, I haven't, pretty much, and then you move on to the next. And so in some ways, we've done a good chunk of the heavy lift of the query part, but anybody who's in already, go in, click on new tiles. If you feel like you know me better now, you can say, yeah, I know that guy, I've worked with him at least once in the last year. But that will help us get a sense of the tapestry that is the workforce system. And I will say we're going to hear some presentations shortly, and having been on this board now, I think for 4 years, my own experience of it is that it is very difficult to get a handle on the whole thing, and even to know how to inform strategic action. And so that's also cumbersome and not working particularly well. So we have to choose, and certainly I'm totally open to any redesign. I didn't have really control over the process. It was a collective process where we tried to do our best in a pilot phase. And I think the reflection of, and the iteration, if we choose to go forward, would allow us to continue to improve that. Any other questions? Yes?
Martin may have noted this process, so how did people, who got emails?
So we worked, Ellen Kaler, Sophia, Dustin, Sarah, a handful of us worked trying to put those lists together. Then we emailed the first list out to other people who we thought had a pretty good idea of who was in the system and who wasn't. So we had, I don't know, probably 20 people overall trying to create that first wave. It was never intended to be a perfect list, but it was intended hopefully to not make too many egregious errors in who did, so if anybody in this room and on this board didn't get an invitation and would like one, check in at the back, because we'll get you the link and you can fill your own information in. We'd love to have you in it. And again, if we decide that there's value in continuing this sort of bottom-up part of our work, or if the legislature decides that it wants to see version 2.0, then we'll continue to refine, and we can see where we're able to go with this information.
My question
Yeah.
really was, how do other people who worked on those initial lists get on?
Well, and so I think then we can get a link to send out. So again, not only can you fill it out if you didn't fill it out, but we can send it to somebody and say, you really should fill this out, we missed you.
Can we put it on the state workforce development board webpage?
I will find out. We'll check it. We'll follow up on that. Yes.
So I'm new as well, so very interesting data. I guess the thing I'm struggling with, although I heard bits of it, is what's the strategy and how it tends to be used? What outcomes do we expect based on that strategy? I don't see that being discussed. So yes, we have data, starts with data, but it's not clear to me what direction the intention it was created for. We have strategy around that, and then lastly, what outcomes do we expect?
So, excellent question. I would say that because it was a limited pilot with maybe some contested views of it, it was very limited in what sort of the broad strategic implications were of what could or should be done with it. From my perspective, one was, as I said, to be able to visualize the complexity that's actually within our system and to give ourselves permission for struggling to get a picture and a handle on all of it. Two was to provide some meaningful enough data sets to see the potential of what we could do if we got to a more rigorous phase 2, which is to be able to slice by population served, regional location, the type of entity, and to be able to then craft strategies of engagement. I have to be careful here because I have one set of opinions, but I don't have the board's set of opinions, nor do I have the legislature's set of opinions. So if I go too far out in front of what we set up, it's just what I hope for. But I will say one thing about what I hope for, and just understand that this is just me as an individual, and that is that if we go to phase 2, that we get invested in building connection, strategically building connection among all of these disparate sectors of the workforce system and monitoring them over time. You can apply, there's data science techniques for monitoring how connected social networks are, and you can evaluate them over time. There's a rigorous metric to do so, and over time, if we're successful in doing more collaborative work, then we will be already moving into the kind of alignment that we talk about all the time as a core strategy of a workforce system, is to be aligned around common goals. And so it's a way of measuring, it's a way of identifying opportunities, and then it's a way of kind of getting over the hurdle of how complex it is to get our brains around it in the first place. And then, again, I'm out a little bit ahead of people, so I just want to know that's me personally. Yes?
So,
In addition to that, I'm going to throw in a very easy way to say it. It's a great way to also say who's doing what. Because within our system, we have so many people doing so many workforce development things around the state with different areas. It's a great way, before we get to what are the strategies and the outcomes we want, let's see who's doing what, and make sure that when we start planning these strategies, we involve the right people and their network.
Yes.
So this might be more of a question for Frank or Lindsay, but well, two parts. Who owns this project? Because this was obviously put together by an ad hoc working group. So going forward, what committee of the state WIN owns this project? So that's the first part. Second part is, obviously, we need more funding to support phase 2, which you're being very careful not to directly say, but I'll say it. So what do we as a WIN, or Workforce Development Board, have to do in order to get to Dale's question about the outcomes and the strategies? Because right now, this is a nice thing. I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean, seriously, it's a good thing, but it's just the tip of the iceberg of what we really want to do. So how do we sustain this work and get to what we really want?
Lindsay, do you use?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a struggle I have as well. I'm kind of like along the lines of Dale, like I'm looking at it and saying it's showing us who's out there, who has responded. I'm not sure I can wrap my brain around yet the potential of what's there, and so it's hard for me to sell it one way or another. I think that definitely the board, whether it's the operating committee comes together and makes a recommendation, but the Department of Labor, along with the Statewide Workforce Development Board, owns this at this point.
Yep.
But again, it takes resources, right, to like keep up with it and manage it, and so all of that will have to be analyzed and decided. So I don't think that we're in any spot yet to say let's go forward or not, or let's not go forward. I think we did, what the board had agreed to, which was spend the $10,000. We have this math now, and I think for some people there are probably answers that they're getting that they didn't have. I think for other people there's a craving for like, what might this help me with in terms of strategic planning, or what are those long-term goals I'm trying to get out of it? I don't know that. So I wish I had a better answer, but I think it's very much up in the air.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up then is how do we get the answer, right? So is that a committee conversation? Is that another working group, or an ad hoc meeting, whatever, because the legislative session's starting in a month.
Right. And the legislature will.
The impact, we should be talking about it now.
Yeah, and I think the legislature will also be looking at it because it was something that they specifically asked for as well. So, Allison and then Dustin.
So, we were very interested in this, in Senate Economic Development. We were very interested in this because I think we were all overwhelmed with how many workforce development opportunities and initiatives and people were out there. We're people, simple brains like who, and we wanted to build a system that coordinated it all. And Tristan and Ellen told us on the opportunity of doing this so that we could begin to get a notion of what's out there and how to coordinate it. And this is one method of how we bring some coordination into that, is I think what we're trying to do. Which is why we want it.
I told you guys to use the board authority to, with the commissioners, to spend money on this system. So it would need, we probably need an extra appropriation for the board that's already.
Yeah.
But we don't need spending authority. It's a may, not a shall. We decide that's something we want to move forward with. We already have the authority to extend that to our with the
Thank you.
at the discretion.
Okay. So I had Dale and then you. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, and maybe it may be too premature at this point, but I'm assuming that folks that came up with this thought in pilot, is there examples of somewhere else where this has been used? And can that be also a template to say, here's where it's worked very well, and why it worked very well to help guide us? I don't think we have to invent here necessarily. Has that been considered or thought of?
So this has not been, these tools have not been used in the workforce space, but they are used in complex collaborative network processes all over the country. There are facilitators and evaluators who are specifically trained in this kind of work. So if we wanted to go that route, we could work with the people who actually know how to make this kind of process work especially well, but that's another layer of the decision making that has to go into understanding where we are. We took a nibble in order to try to get a sort of a view in to that possibility, but that's as far as we've gotten. Hugh, and I know we need to get off the stage here, but.
Who's kicking you off?
So it's one of the, yeah, you just something up real quick. Sorry. Just incomplete data can sometimes be dangerous because you make assumptions. And so as I will fully disclose that I started doing this but did not complete. And I'm intrigued by the notion of this informing the regional convenes because I think there's some real power there. But I wonder if setting a stake for completion would be helpful to get folks to actually get in there and take the dive and take the time to do it so that we can have a really good map to use for the regional convenes.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the one thing, I agree with you that the incomplete data can be challenging. The one thing I will say here is that there's no stakes in the sense of if somebody doesn't fill it out or fills it out in a limited way, the worst thing that we find out is they actually know way more people than we thought that they did, and that they've done a lot more than we thought that they did. So it's not like it's a club. It's more of an, over somebody, but it's more of an invitation in to collaboration. So that's the good news about the incomplete data. The governor's invitation went out. We did a follow-up, I think, 3 weeks ago. And I think we can talk more about getting the uptake rate a little higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful for me to hear from you also, and I'm not talking about right here, but whether you all see it as something we should put value into, like time, effort, money. My door is open because like I said, I can see why for some people this is really great. They can see the picture, but I'm still trying to, like I'm Dale. I'm trying to figure out like what decision making will this really drive for me or Dennis, or it might be different for all of us, but I just think some like real life examples would be helpful to me. But if folks have used this sort of network mapping, I'd love to hear from you and see whether we should put more energy behind it.
Right.
I was just going to add that I think that there's a missing link. Like, let's say everyone participated and we had a full network map. How would that help? I think we need to then talk about how do you actually then coordinate. It's not that we don't know about each other being out there. It's whether or not that's going to inform who has responsibility for X, Y, Z, the different audiences that are served by all the different programs. I think a network map in and of itself is not going to help us coordinate.
I totally agree on the last statement. In and of itself, it isn't the coordination tool. It is a mechanism for activities that lead to coordination in hosting meetings, designing processes. So it is a tool. It's part of the understanding, the collective sense making of what's going on within this system. But I would push back a little bit. I think you are in a position where you see a lot of the system, but many people who are in it at the project level, program level, or even organizational level do not have your view of the system. They know the people that they see regularly. They don't have good lateral visibility. And that's one of the things that a network project like this is designed to surface, is that sort of, if you have a flat view of the system because of where you work in it, being able to see the people who you don't see easily.
But I just want to, as a follow-up, I just want to make sure that, are we all in agreement that that is the problem facing us? Is that the problem, or is it that there were so many programs out there? So it's just really, if we have to work towards better coordination, maybe we need to spend our time on how we would do that, irrespective of whether the network map is fully possible.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would say two things. One, this is a really wonderful conversation, but I don't think we're ready to have it because the project has to go. So I think organizations. So as we go through implementing 189, something to keep in mind is that we're also going to be reaching out to employers then. So I would say we should set a date, finish the project, evaluate the project as a board, or maybe have a subcommittee evaluate the project, and then make a decision further on. I think having conversations before the project is even done is a little premature. Not to get us back on track in time.
Yeah.
Just quickly, for maybe a little clarity, even now, can other stakeholders, employers, educators, nonprofits access this and use this tool right now?
Anybody who is invited in can use the tool. It's not publicly published, but if you have the link to fill it out, you can go in there and you can experiment with slicing into views however you want. So that's a yep. Great. Sorry, I said I would only take 10 minutes. I apologize, but I'm glad there were questions.
Tristan, thank you. You did a really good job presenting, and there seems to be a lot of interest on this. Mary Ann Sheehan, sorry to put you on the spot here. We've got a bunch of new members here. Would you come up and just give us a really short summary of what's going on in talent pipeline management? I've had a couple of people ask me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Ann Sheehan, and I work for the Vermont Business Roundtable, and my work is called the Vermont Talent Pipeline. There's not a lot of people in this room who I haven't met yet, but there are some. And I'll just say the work of the Talent Pipeline, if you've never heard of it before, is an employer-led model to fill the skills gap. So the idea behind it, it was developed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and it's in a national rollout. The idea behind it is to create a sector strategy that actually works with employers in a collective impact model where we bring them together and we ask them to identify their most critical jobs. So from this, we're working to develop how many of those jobs and what the skill sets are required for those so that we can translate it to the educational community. When we do that, the educational community can respond by aligning programs in secondary, post-secondary, and higher education so that they can help fill those jobs. So there's a piece of the work that we're doing which creates a career pathway within the employer model. So I'll just use healthcare as an example. We're working in healthcare. We asked them what their most critical jobs were. And what do you think rose to the top? Nurses. So nurses at all levels, everything from a healthcare assistant up to a nurse practitioner, including a registered nurse and a clinical nurse manager. So if they're creating career pathways for people to enter that field, they need to be low barrier on-ramps for any population, people who are entering at any level. And that's the idea behind it, so that you can get into a field and have a career, not just a job. And the employers are leading the way in doing this. So I see a really great connection between everybody here. We're talking about employers, we're talking about educators, and we're talking about the labor market, plus all the neutral conveners who exist around our state. When we think about it, our state is a small state, 625, changing periodically. So it's about the size of a small city in another area. So we're geographically dispersed, but we can work together. We have a lot of benefit of, the people in this room have been pulled together for a really great reason. So that's sort of a nutshell on what the talent pipeline is. I don't want to give you much on that. Hey, Lynn?
Does it go the other way, not just toward education, to maybe retool training programs for pathways, but talking to employers about perhaps retooling some of what's going on there?
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of the number of women untapped into the skilled trades, but who are responsible for kids until about 8:30 in the morning. I worked in construction. We were always on site by 7:30, but I always got overtime to stay till 4:30. So why couldn't I have started at 8:30 or 9?
That's definitely a part of it. You know, when we were talking to, let's just use nursing because we started there, but nurses in particular happen to be mostly women. And so, you know, a lot of these folks who are entering that field, they're looking for a career pathway. They're not just graduating from high school. They are people who have been out in the workforce, and many of them have families already. So we're talking about educational pathways that serve people who have families already, employers who are willing to allow shorter, you know, length of service. Yeah, exactly. So there's two pieces to this. Educators are saying, here's what we can do to help. Here's what we need from you. So there's, you know, new partnerships developing in those worlds. So,
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks very much. Tom, would you like to come up and give the resource presentation? Bring your team up as you. Thank you. Everyone knows Tom Longstreth from Resource. Watch your step.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much. It's fun to have this opportunity to talk a little bit, especially after seeing myself on the screen there. I was one of those dots on the sort of you know, you were sort of now drilling into one of them and sort of seeing some of the connections. But for those who don't know, Resource is a nonprofit organization that tries to combine the three parts of our mission, workforce development, environmental stewardship, and poverty relief, into an effective model for helping the community and helping, in particular, the trainees we serve. So I'm going to just very briefly introduce who we are. We have workforce development programs and work experience programs. The work experience is sort of these two umbrellas. The work experience is that entry level. The end of that program may not result in employment, but it's the start on that pathway. The workforce development programs, really the expectation is credentials, it's jobs on the other end. And so that's the overall mixture. We have 4 different sites, but we run training programs actually across the state in addition to the places where we operate, Burlington, Williston, Barry, and Hyde Park. But for example, over the summer we were down in Brattleboro and Springfield, Hardwick, Middlebury, other sites. So why don't I stop there? But one of the training programs that does a great job in connecting these 3 parts of the mission is our Youth Build training program. And I'm going to introduce Andrew Jope, who's our Youth Build program director. He'll tell you a bit more about it and then introduce 2 of our current students. So, Andrew.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As Tom said, my name's Andrew Jope, and I'm the Youth Build director at Resource. And I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, but for those of you who may not know us and may not know what we do, Resource Youth Build is a job skills training program. We have sites in Burlington and Barry, and together we're going to serve about 30 to 35 young people every year. It's a 12-month program, and there's really 4 main components to it. It's sort of hard to talk about them separately because I think the program design is integrated and intentionally integrated, but it's the job skills training piece, career development, leadership development, and it's also an AmeriCorps service experience. I'll talk mostly about what the career development and the job skills piece looks like. Our students, as the name suggests, are learning construction skills. And through that, they're getting a host of certifications, most notably the NCCER, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. That's the National Center for Construction Education and Research. So that's kind of the industry standard certification that they're getting, as well as OSHA 10, CPR and first aid. Those are the main ones. It sort of looks like on the front end, training people in safety and tool use and things like that. And then once we've got them to a certain skill level, they're actually out in the community and practicing their skills, rehabilitating and weatherizing affordable housing units, building public infrastructure. So we do a lot of outbuildings in the city of Burlington. These guys have been learning about the winter construction season in Vermont, working outside in public parks in Burlington recently. And so that really marries up to the AmeriCorps service piece. We're actually using our construction skills and using the vehicle of training in order to make the community better. And so, these guys will do 675 hours of direct community service, primarily in affordable housing provision and again, building public infrastructure. And then the career development is really, it's both kind of a formal piece of the curriculum, but they're also going through a career counseling process the entire time that they're with us, trying to narrow down what they want to do when they leave. So it is a year program, and then we want to help them land in something they're going to be excited about at the conclusion of that year, whether that's stepping right into a career or an apprenticeship or some kind of post-secondary education and training. We're really trying to target that strategy with them over the course of the whole year so that they have a kind of a seamless transition into that next placement. And we then work with them for an entire 12 months after they graduate to help continue provide those career services after graduation. There's a lot more to talk about. I know our time is limited, so maybe I'll just say I'd be happy to talk to people during break, and I do want to turn it over to these guys. I do want to mention one more thing, though, and that's a new program that we're offering at our Burlington site called Construction 101 that I'm hoping some of you heard about, but I'm pretty confident a lot of you have not. It's probably no surprise to this group, particularly in Chittenden County and Burlington, there is a lot of construction going on, and every day we're talking to employers who are screaming for qualified people. And so in partnership with the City of Burlington, we are running a free 10-week class called Construction 101. We're in a session right now, but we have sessions coming up January 28th and March 25th. And it's a lot of what I just described, shrunken down into 9 to 4 every day. Let's get the certification and get you out with employers as quickly as possible. Graduates from that program are getting multiple job offers in the $17 to $18 an hour range. So it's, the jobs are there, the skills are needed, and I don't know. I guess I could say more, but I do want to give these guys a chance to talk. So please catch me at break if you want to learn more about that program as well. Yeah, Marianne.
So I just wanted to mention that the Employer Construction Collaborative of the Vermont Pipeline has also worked with the resource group to put people into internships. So we have a relationship going with resource that I think is incredibly valuable to the employers and also to the labor market.
Yeah, for sure. And a good example of that, I know in talking to Marianne, the employers that she's working with have said that holders of that NCCER certification will be guaranteed an interview and a higher starting wage if they hold that certification. So I mean, already we've seen some pretty good results through that collaboration. So Gordon, do you want to come up, maybe say a little bit about how you found Youth Build, how it's working for you? Yeah? Okay.
So, as he said, I'm Gordon Bell. I'm 18. I've been going through Youth Build since March, and it's been a really positive experience. When I was over at Burlington High School, I wasn't the best student, and so they basically had said, hey, can't have you here anymore. And from prior experience from my brother going through Youth Build and getting his diploma, I said, I'll take a crack at that. And the experience has been, again, very positive. And all the staff is kind, supportive. After Youth Build, I might get into metal work. And yeah, my attendance was very failing, and wasn't seen as the best student, as I've said. But I really switched that around coming to Youth Build, trying my best to get in and do as much as I can. I come with a positive vibe and willingness to work.
Did you earn your GED, Gordon, or will you get a diploma from Burlington High School?
I will be getting a diploma from Burlington High School. Anyone that comes into Youth Build will be getting the diploma that they get from the corresponding high school that they came from.
Good job.
Yeah. This is a very close friend. His name is Tate, and he's coming at the same time that I did.
Greetings, everyone. So I'm with Gordon. I'm in the same crew as him. We're called I Crew, and we're the remaining members of it. But we're joined together with other crews that are more new. And it's been a really great experience. Before Youth Build, I was having a similar trouble of just not going to classes and just like struggling a lot in high school. And they weren't really doing anything about it. They were just kind of letting me take my own self-destructive path, I guess you could say. So I heard about Youth Build, and it was one of my remaining choices of what I could do to change my life around. I decided to go to it, and I've been going since March. I showed up with Gordon, and it's been the best decision of my life because I've definitely figured out a lot of stuff I want to do. Like, my idea after Youth Build is to go into like maritime fishing or maybe hunting and trapping or similar things like that, because that's just what I'm into. And that's a part of a good thing about Youth Build is they have like ways of helping you find what you want to do and like having jobs based on what you want to do. So I like told my interests, and they helped me out with finding jobs that I might be interested in. So yeah, it's the teachers, the staff, I should say, and the students there are all really great people. I consider everyone there a friend, and it's definitely really changed my life around, and it's definitely made the people I love proud of me, and it's made me a really great person, and I couldn't live without Youth Build. It's just such a great opportunity.
I have a question for both of you. So obviously you're positive and you're showing up, and you said that maybe was something that you struggled with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So can you put your finger on what's really different, like what you might share to another student who's struggling about what you're doing now that makes it more enticing? Is it the people around you? Is the program, what is enticing you to show up and be so positive?
I feel like for me, it's the people definitely that help me come every day, because they're all so friendly, and like we're all practically friends there. So it just really helps, because like if I'm like having a hard day, I'll have them message me and say like, hey, how you doing? Just to like see how I am and see if I'm like sick or whatever it is that's going on.
So there's a lot of support.
Yeah, there's a lot of support that helps me come. And I give Gordon a hard time too with that stuff. Or we really look out for each other because we're the only two in our crew. But we still do have people that we work with.
Can I just add on to that? And you guys correct me if I get this wrong, but my perception from talking to many other students, and both within the Youth Build program, but others, but one of the key elements is that all of the resources trainees are put into positions where they are expected to help other people, and they are given leadership opportunities. So these guys are weatherizing homes, they're building affordable housing, they're doing community service projects that range from cooking a meal in a community kitchen to volunteering for resource to help us relieve poverty. I mean, so there's lots of different ways, but I think that's a common element in all of our training programs and motivates the trainees to work harder, show up on time, do sort of the hard stuff that needs to change. And both of these guys are talking about how they've made a change. That it helps to have good staff, but it's coming from the students. But I think the change piece is that they're in a leadership position. They have a responsibility to someone else. So.
We'll go here and then.
You both mentioned you're the remaining members of your I group or your group. What does that mean?
So when we say we're the remaining I crew, in the beginning there was a few other students that had came. They had a bit of personal issues, and they could not continue to come to Youth Build, and they hopefully found alternatives. Wasn't that many to begin with, about 4, me, Tate, and 2 others. One of them has come back, but they're in a different crew now.
So overall, the Youth Build program has about a 60% completion rate, and we'd like that to be higher, but what we don't want to do is change the standards. And so these guys have to show up, they have to do some hard work to stay in the program. And if they're not doing that, they can't stay in the program. So that's why there is an attrition rate, because not everyone can stick to it. So.
And there's 7 people in your crew? So the crew model is fluid, right? So while they may have shed some, there's now, I think, 5 other people in your crew right now.
Yeah.
So is it always does it start with a cohort group of 7 always, and then
Yeah.
due to attrition you can accept new people?
Exactly.
So were you both part of the Career and Technical Education program at Burlington High School?
I was not. You were doing auto body?
Yeah, I was doing auto body repair there, and I didn't end up doing it eventually after a year because I just found out it was something I didn't enjoy doing.
Yeah. Hey, Carol.
Okay, Carol.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out, going back to the network map, about the wonderful collaborative between education organizations such as Vermont Adult Learning, which is covering Chittenden County, and Central Vermont Adult Basic Education, and Vermont's great commitment to flexible pathways, education, and an alternative route to getting a high school diploma. And so the collaboration that happens between Resource Youth Build and the adult ed and literacy providers as we're working to craft personalized education plans to give the students high school of choice. And then the plan managers and teachers provided by the adult ed literacy program. So it's a talk about the network maps, career training and education partners, and the Agency of Education, which is supporting that funding, and those of you who are legislators who are making sure that those funds are available for individuals like these 2 wonderful young men to be able to get their high school credentials.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there's again, through the collaboration with the Adult Ed Agency, Vermont Adult Learning in Chittenden County and CVAVE in Central Vermont and Barry, that's kind of the glue that ties these guys to their sending high school and allows them to earn that diploma at the end of the line.
And along with Department of Labor. I mean, Department of Labor,
for sure.
in some cases, Vermont Voc Rehab are really key partners with Resource. We really rely on that integrated coalition to get the work done. So thank you all. I think we probably should end, even if there's questions, because I think there's an agenda that we're slipping on. Maybe not all our fault, but.
Tom, Andrew, Gordon, and Tate, thank you. That was really good. One thing, real quickly here, one of the interesting things about Vermont is sometimes people will leave their occupations, join government for a while, and then do public service. Any of you that are serving Governor Scott and his administration know that. And then we have people talking about Hal Cohen, who was here with us for years, left, became the Secretary of Human Services, and now he's back with us again. And the reason I mention this is he's sitting at a table with a person who has done an amazing job, and I just wanted to thank her. It's, I think, one of her last meetings with us, and that's Commissioner Lisa Menard. Lisa, thank you. We wish you the best, and we'll probably see you again somewhere else, I'm sure. So thank you, Lisa. Great job. We're going to take a 10-minute comfort break, and if you could come back in 10 minutes, that'd be great. Thanks.
Some things that we can do to support that transition into employability, right? Or relevant skills. And how do we tie those pieces together more formally and more seamlessly? Wrong way, sorry. Okay. As I said earlier, the primary deliverable of this grant, it is a planning grant, is at the end of it that we have a strategic plan that aligns with the overall state plan and that helps us be better prepared and to secure an implementation grant that allows us to go forward and to partner continuously to support offender reentry. It asks us to take a look at how do we identify and use assessments, screening tools, literacy and math tools. How do we identify what kind of specific job training we should be focused on, or multiple pathways, if you will. And it asks us to work collaboratively with our partners and our sister departments to collect data, to develop individualized plans, and to really begin to take a look at how do we track employment outcomes. So we put all this effort in together. How do we actually know for whom was this very beneficial and what do we need to tweak to make it more beneficial for other cohorts? Sorry, I keep going the wrong way here. I think I'm still going the wrong way. The core deliverables here, excuse me, our work streams are that what we're going to try to do is, in terms of this grant, is that we really need to identify how do we create and expand educational and vocational assessments, how do we expand existing culinary certifications. So we currently have a community high school of Vermont. Our school is an accredited school, it's an independent school. It does offer a workforce readiness certificate, and it does offer some industry recognized certificates, right? What we want to do is align what we're doing with what is the best practice outside. The other thing that we also want to do is we want to be much more clear about what is our current, in terms of our inmate population, what are their literacy and numeracy capacity at the time of intake, and how do we get them into a position where they're actually able to use vocational training. What we've begun to find is that for a significant number of our population, their testing out, their initial testing out is below the 8th grade level. So they're not ready, which begins to explain why they may be having some challenges in terms of being successful in applying for and securing and retaining employment out in the community. We will explore the possibility of using facility kitchens as in addition to our operational needs. What's the feasibility of providing some vocational training as part of that, and to what extent is that a viable transition and livable job for inmates as they begin to transition out. And as I said earlier, we're really hoping to begin to take a look at how do we best use the opportunities that we have with correctional industries. What are the connections that we might be able to make with employers or private industries or training groups that might be able to help us leverage that opportunity to the best availability and benefit of the population that we have, and align that with market demands and where people may be able to find good career opportunities as they begin to transition out. It requires that we participate, which we are looking forward to and have begun, with education. We have currently, we are in 3 facilities. We have CCV comes into 2 of our facilities, and UVM is coming into 1 of our facilities currently. They came into 2 facilities last year. We're beginning to develop those secondary education links and relationships, and exploring how we might be able to identify partnerships with those schools to provide additional tracks, engagement and tracks into higher learning. And we're fortunate in that we have a partnership, a designated person with vocational rehab who is currently going to 4 facilities and helping inmates who are preparing for reentry begin to sign up early and begin to make connections with their business account managers in the regions that they're transitioning to. So we're hoping to expand those kinds of linkages that will allow us to better do warm handoffs for individuals as they're beginning to transition out of an incarcerated setting. Questions? Yes?
What's the timeline for the planning grant?
So the planning grant is 1 year. However, I will tell you that I spoke to our TA last week, and she started using 2 years. It started making me think they're not ready to release the money yet. So we'll see. But yes?
Oh, I guess. Just curious on what kind of classes are being offered by like UVM and CCV. Can you give me context of what type of coursework
Sure.
targeted?
So UVM offered a writing course, sort of an introductory writing course. It is one of their prerequisites in both facilities. I think in the women's facility, they found a higher literacy level, and I think that they also began to offer like a mythology course or a sociology course, maybe both, because they've been doing it, they're doing one now too, so I might be confused. CCV has also done some college introductory writing, and I also think that they've started exploring, they have I don't know, is she still here? No. They have developed a course that begins, sort of is one of their preparatory courses for new interested students, but I don't think it's a credit-bearing course yet. Thank you.
Great. Nice job. Thanks, Kim. Any other business to come before us? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn. I want to thank Sophia first. Thank you, Sophia. And Dustin, thank you, Lindsay, and your team. Motion to adjourn.